Is it not working, shoot? Okay. Do you need Bryce to come up and give you a hand? Not available? Okay. Do you need to call Shelley to ask her how to do it? Oh,
Is Anne's not in the building? David? Oh. Hmm.
yeah. In future, we can get all this sorted out before council starts. That would be great. Yeah. Okay. 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 But maybe Bryce could train all the people who cover for council to how to do that. That would be great too. Then they would know how to do it. I said maybe Bryce could train a number of people how to run that system. Okay. I have an appointment at 4 o'clock today, so I'd like to get council done before around
Yeah,
3:30.
local starts at 4.
Pardon me?
4, 4:30 and 5.
What's that?
Local.
Oh,
4, 4:30 and 5 we have.
well, while we're waiting on this, the system to get up and running, I'll hand you out these documents here on a strictly confidential basis. Do I have an undertaking, council, that you'll keep this in strictest confidence and okay. are we feeding live now? When you press the button? Okay, good. Okay, we can get started then. Sego Sawakwego. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council meeting. Today is June the 16th, 2023, and we are now at 9:37 in the morning. We've had a few technical issues with getting our live feed started, and so we apologize for that. I'll introduce the members of council who are present. Councillor Stacia Loft is here. Councillor Josh Hill is here. Councillor Ted Miracle is here. Councillor Chris Miracle's daughter is getting married in British Columbia this week, so he will be joining us, he said, in mid-morning, this morning by Zoom call. I also have David Soulier, the Chief Administrative Officer, here, as well as Tanya Miracle is going to be our recording secretary, and she works in the Nation Building program, Community Services program, and so welcome everyone. So it's part of our culture and custom here to look to the Creator for guidance as we begin to discuss the matters that are on our agenda. So we'll gather our hearts and minds and spirits together in a spirit of peace, in a spirit of love, and a spirit of friendship as we look to the Creator for guidance. Gunjokwa, Sadawan Siyos, ni Gariwesa, ni Egaradi, Ohodon, Gariwatego, Ongada non hote, Aguego, Unska, Edeniwe Noni, Nemgwa Nigura. Dano, de Yatini Rados, ni Ogwe Sonpa, Suk Aguego, Skuno, Agohage. Aguego, Unska, Edeniwe Noni, Nemgwa Nigura. De Yatini Rados, ni Yedit Stonha, G. Yowanjadi, G. Sego, Jatka go bon hadjes, ago sat stonsara, na e yo ho yohage, aguego unska edeniwe noni neogwa nigora, the attenuate rados ne aguego yok he yon was a geo anjade, aguego unska edeniwe noni neogwa nigora, dano, the attenuate rados ne aguego yok yon was a g garohiade, dano, ono, gadi, aguego, de siwe ne verado ne songoya dizo ne negasat stonsura no so oyera eto neo dunhak ne ogwa nigora. And those words translate into the English language. It means, my people, listen for a short time. The business has come to pass. Everyone, we will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to the people, so that peace will continue for all. Everyone, we will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to our Mother the Earth as she still goes along, giving of her own strength for us to live good lives. Everyone, we will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to all things that support us on the earth. Everyone, we will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to all things that support us in the sky and the heavens. And now we send our greetings to Sungoyat Dizo, the Creator, the great strength of the natural world. Let this always continue in our minds. And our council respects both the traditional prayer as well as the Christian prayer. So I'll say the Christian prayer now. Sungwat Niha, Negarung Yage, Desiderum, Wagosanadagondi, Sayanetra Andawat, Jinunsere, Etniawan Hunjagi, Jonanito Negarung Yagi, Dagyo, Nego Nisaradi, Yatniwisaragi, Unguanadrunk, Neone Dondagodiosto, Nejung Wari Wanero, Jisa de Gary Stonis, Ne Rowdy Waner Uxero, Ego Ase Sawa, Nagayanetra Nagasat Stonsera, Ne always onsera, Jenyahoe, Awa. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So we have an agenda prepared for you, and I'll just recite what's on the agenda. The first order of business will be to review and adopt the agenda. And is there a motion then to review and adopt to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Ted Miracle. Is there a seconder?
Next, I got you.
Seconded by Councillor Josh Hill. Stacia, are you in favor?
I also mind it's a very long agenda and we may need to revisit this to adjust as we go.
Okay.
So just wanted to
Okay, thank you. The motion is carried, and so the first order of business is the May 23rd minutes. Are there any errors or corrections to these minutes? Errors, omissions, or corrections to the May 23rd, 23 minutes? There's just one item that I noticed, motion 5. We're applying to the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund for all remaining unserviced roads with water lines. We're asking for water line construction at an estimated cost of $46,780,000. So I'd like that added in there so that people know what the funding is for. Are there any other errors, omissions, or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none.
sorry, I didn't have one, and I think it's just wording, it's motion number 8. We can change the wording on that. For you to gather feedback for a period of 30 days. So I'm just trying to add on here. Gather feedback from membership over a 30-day period as council is considering changing the size of council. The way it reads is that we're changing the size of council for 30 days. So if we could finesse that a little bit. Sure. Might not have to work there. I think that's the only one.
Let's say maybe motion 10, just to be a little more thorough. So, no change to the investment portfolio as recommended by.
So we need a name there. And what name are we putting in there?
I think we could just be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's
By, we'll put Mark McDonald,
And then be Nesbitt Burns.
BMO Nesbitt Burns. Okay, are there any other errors, omissions, or corrections to the May 23rd, 2023 minutes? Seeing none, can I have a motion to accept these minutes as corrected? Moved by Councillor Stacia Loft. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Stacia Ted Miracle. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. We have the a number of copies of the library minutes for January, March, April, May of this year. Just really basically information sharing about the activities they're taking, their fundraising events, and would like to commend on behalf of the council and our staff the volunteers who sit on our library board. Thank you very much for doing such good work, and we appreciate your service. Thank you. Is there a motion then to accept the January 3rd, 2023 library minutes, as well as for March the 7th, 2023, April 4th, 2023, and May 2nd, 2023? Is there a motion?
I can move that, Chief.
Moved by Councillor Josh Hill, and who will second it? Seconded by Councillor Stacia Loft. Are you in favor, Ted? The motion is carried. Thank you. We have before you the, is there any business arising from the minutes? Any business arising from the minutes? Counselor Ted? Counselor Josh?
I thought there was one. Just gonna check for you.
With regard to the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund project there in motion number 5 to construct new water lines, my understanding, and David, maybe you can confirm if you know in your conversation with Todd or Justin G. I understand that their target was to have the design ready by the end of June. Is that still that they're going to meet those dates?
That's what I recall, but I have to actually confirm.
Okay, that'll
I
be
can
fine.
do that, Chief, if you want. Just give me a second.
Sure, just for information purposes, but that's the target date anyway to have that information. There is $350 million in the ISK budget, Ontario region, for water, wastewater. There's $57 million that is being held back at the discretion of the department to spend for education or water or wastewater, according to the email that I received from Nico Paul. So there's 89 million in housing and $39 million in capital for education, which is a very small budget for education. So we should try to tap into that money because when I spoke to Todd, the plan was to go to both DMAF and ISK for a contribution for the 46,780,000 that we need to deal with water lines on the rest of the reserve. Okay. So
I'm good, Chief.
okay, no business. Stacia, do you have any business arising from the minutes?
Motion number 24. This is the Iroquois caucus. I'm just wondering if you had an update on that. And then you have an update.
That was motion 24.
This is for the Iroquois caucus. The 31st and stations. I'm just wondering if you had an update on that. If there was any action items that we need to be aware of.
There were a number of items that were discussed. What I'll have to do is look into my notes. There was a lot of things discussed. We discussed obviously the need for the backlog in housing and infrastructure. We made them aware of Nietzsche. That Nietzsche is a new corporation that's been tasked by the government through an agreement to dole out the $4 billion. They have $289 million to dole out over the next 2 years for housing, but it's targeted for off-reserve, urban, rural, northern, First Nations, Métis, Inuit off-reserve. Some of the northern reserves may be eligible. It's quite unclear about that. And also they're going to have the $4 billion housing investment, and that's targeted the same group for off-reserve. The government's going to fund that over 4 years. There was no consultation with the AFN or the Chiefs of Ontario on this initiative. They made an agreement last year sometime with Canada, and so they're tasked with that responsibility. The backlog, the Iroquois caucus recognized that there needed to be more lobby work done to deal with the backlog of need. What I'll do, Stacia, is I'll have to get my book and write you a report because I can't recall exactly what all of it. There's a number of things that were discussed, and it's usually the same discussion about a lengthy discussion about the ongoing, everlasting dispute between traditional governments and elected governments, and the kinds of issues that they were experiencing. That was talked about there at great length, and also issues about the misrepresentation of history on that topic was discussed primarily by Six Nations councillors. But that was pretty much Shu, you were there. Do you recall anything else that they talked about?
It's okay, maybe you can figure it out.
I've had so many things on my mind lately. I've got them here in the notes here, but it's quite lengthy.
Yeah, maybe for,
I'll write your report. I'll write your report. They discussed the hiring of the coordinator work that had to be done there. That was one of the items. That still is not, that's the coordinator.
that would be great.
Yeah.
New direction, so I think we need to choose to make the coordinator for the position that also develop a sort of guidelines of the advisor position and full-time position. And if you're going to that, you should have to say on 15,000.
Mhm.
Once we get a stand on an understanding of the finances are, then it's and part of it is that super
Yeah.
you're right. And okay, yeah, no, that's great. I think just an update, that was a good update. Thanks for that, Shu, and that was helpful. And I think
Yeah, Ava Hill made a very good presentation on the work that the committee is doing on the border crossing issue and the alliance that's being formed. So they're doing good work, and there was an update on that. Of course, the issue still has a lot of work to do to be resolved. There's a border experience that members are having at different borders, and just by the high level discussions that are going on to try to resolve it, and where they're getting traction, I guess where they need to do more work, that kind of thing.
yeah, they want this work done.
Yeah. Yeah. I did suggest to the caucus that they apply for government funding and set up an office. I think they would have greater presence if they did that, but there was no motion to go to government. There was different mixed views about that. There was no decisions, and so it looks like that they may be coming back to the communities for additional contribution, so that the Iroquois caucus can be staffed adequately to do the research and analysis on the number of topics that the Iroquois caucus is discussing. And so it still is a lot of, I would call it development work for getting set up. But again, I said, the topics that we're discussing are basically Crown relation documents, and every other PT or political organization is getting funding from the government to carry on those conversations. And I think that we should tap into those resources as well. But it seems to be an expression of sovereignty of some sort to have complete independence of government funding. So that's pretty much it. But it's a lot of the same issues that have been at caucus for a long time, and there was an update on I had an update, by the way, from the court case. I don't think they discussed the HDR court case, did they, at that meeting? Yeah, the previous meeting. But anyway, the update on that is the HDI was not granted intervenor status in the Six Nations land claim court case. The Mississaugas were granted limited participation in an intervenor status. So are there any other action items here, or
had an update for number 25. There was a question at the last meeting as to the term of the representative, and he's representative on the Highland Shores Board. And so it is set for a period of 2 years, but there is no definitive term. So we can have same representative there
Yeah.
for many years.
Yeah, that item's
There's
on,
no
yeah, that item's on the agenda to reappoint for a longer period of time. So, okay, so then we'll carry on then. We get our business done. So meetings outside of the territory. So the Chiefs annual General Assembly is in Halifax this year. And on July the 12th I'll be there at that meeting. And so could we change the council date from July the 12th to an alternative date? And on the 22nd, I had previously booked I have a speaking engagement at the City of Kingston Heritage Hour Talk.
Chief, we're just on the upcoming meetings outside the territory right now. I think we can adjust the other ones.
Okay,
Maybe after.
all right, okay. Meetings outside the territory. So June the 26th and 27th, itself will be meeting at Niagara Falls. And July the 11th to 13th will be the AFN General Assembly in Halifax. On March the 7th, AI Housing Symposium will be at Niagara Falls. The CWC Strategic Planning meeting will take place at Keene, Ontario. And Stacia, you'll be attending that, I presume? Your name is here?
I am, and I may be attending that SAW meeting in Niagara Falls on June 26th, 27th, and I may attend the Annual General Assembly
Okay.
as well, so that can be noted. I'm just curious to know why the March 7th, 8th, AI housing. Oh, that was.
Sorry, I forgot to raise my hand. I tried to raise this at the last meeting because Chris had handed in an expense report and we didn't have it approved. And I was told to put it back onto this agenda, so that's what I did. You're welcome.
Okay, so then okay, so is that on the agenda? I didn't get all of.
You read it, March 7th to 8th, the AI housing.
Okay,
So
so,
basically need approval so that way we can pay him.
okay, so it's a motion to attend the March 7th housing meeting. Is that what it was, Angela?
Yes,
Okay, so we don't lose sight of that. Could we get a motion now? He did attend and he has an expense report.
it can be a part of all those meetings. And it was hard for me to hear Stacia. I heard her say that she's going to CWC, but I don't know if she said something else because I missed it. It's hard to hear.
There
Okay.
must be something wrong with the mic, is what I'm guessing, because a meeting in the mic, but it's still being last week. So, can you hear me, Angela?
Somewhat, as long as someone can hear you, and if we have to add the additional dates, I just want to make sure we get it all correct, that's all.
Okay,
So I had said that I may be attending the SAW meeting, June 26th, 27th. I just need to
Okay.
confirm that, and I would like to attend the AFN Annual General Assembly.
Okay.
and I think I have previous motions to attend those meetings. But if not, for clarity, let's get another motion in case it's not there. So can we have a motion then to approve those minutes or to confirm those minutes, those meeting dates that are there in number 3? Who will move? And as the AI health portfolio holder for the Chiefs of Ontario, I usually attend the SAW meetings as well when I'm available. Is there a motion then to approve those meeting dates? Including the one for March the 7th and 8th for Chris Miracle attending the AI Housing Symposium.
So I guess it's more like acknowledging, not approving them, I would say.
Well, they involve travel outside of the territory, so that's why they need to be approved.
Well, this is well after the fact, not before the fact.
Well, the
That's
chief
2
was
months
aware
ago.
because he did respond to the chief, because the chief asked who was attending, and Chris said that he wanted to go, but it only had gone to the chief, like the email was to the chief and not on the agenda. So
Like
we
he-
know that normally we do the expenses based on approval at council, so that's why I put it back on.
I think that they were reimbursing the expenses too, weren't they, for delegates to attend?
Is that what they do? Yeah.
I believe that there was, the email said that there was reimbursement. I believe it was the one that, Chief, you were gonna go and then you didn't end up going, but Chris and Tommy went.
So I don't see any reason to withhold approval of it. He did go. He has that portfolio. They were paying the expenses, reimbursing the expenses, if I understand
I
it.
never suggested that at all, chief.
Okay.
I just suggested, do we approve or do we just acknowledge travel? That's what
No,
I asked. What's
because
our
it- well,
policy say?
we've been approving travel outside the territory by motion.
Is that what our policy, do we have actually a policy around that? Or just a procedure?
So the procedure that we followed since I've been here
Yeah.
for 6 years is that if you guys are traveling off the territory, you make a motion so that the person can attend those meetings.
Prior to.
Yeah,
Not
prior to
after.
them attending.
So that's what I'm saying. I can move to acknowledge the travel because it's after the fact now. Like, but to approve
Well,
it.
well, then why don't we
And
have
it's
two
too late
separate
now.
votes? Some of it's future.
Well, why don't we be consistent? Why don't we just, from now on, we just approve to acknowledge travels instead of really approving the travel? Because that's basically what we do, right? Is just acknowledge.
Knowledge of travel, that's.
Yeah.
I don't see any concern with that.
Because if council feels that they need to go like Stacia, she doesn't have to ask for approval. She just letting us know that she's
I don't agree with
she's
that.
attending. It's acknowledge.
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with acknowledge?
No, I don't agree with, the whole point why we have these is, let's say there's a, infrastructure, conference in Hawaii for 3 weeks
Mhm.
that you feel that you should attend and could probably get something good out of at a cost of $25,000. I think that should be approved, and
Well, we do approve travel budget though for each one.
that's approve. So
Oh, fine,
that's why
yeah.
I think there's a difference between approving and acknowledging that it should
Should be a
should
separation.
require the approval of this table
Yeah. To attend.
to attend. Just in, not that I'm saying that that's would happen, but I think that it warrants that
We have. been-
oversight.
That's
We've
a
been
good
using the
point.
word approve the travel. David?
So to that point, what we're talking about are two things here, right? So you do have an approved travel budget for each of you
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year, right? Or the beginning of the
Mhm.
term rather, and each fiscal year. And what we're talking about is avoiding having what is called a blanket travel authority. You're looking at having a travel authority that requires the approval of council so that whatever travel is being taken is within reason. It's an accountability factor, right? Because again, the example that Josh just gave, a person could just say, well, I've got my approved budget, it's 25 grand, and then off to Hawaii, they go for an infrastructure meeting, which may not necessarily actually benefit the community, right? So that would be the reason. In this particular instance, you're talking about an instance where approval was sought, but it wasn't granted because it didn't come to the table on the agenda. So you can posthumously approve that, I guess, is what you guys can make a motion to do, is say that you're okay with that. It was an oversight, whatever. And then going forward, any of the meetings that are listed today, you're going to approve, and then everybody knows, and it's on the record.
Okay, so let's stick with what we've been doing all along. We use the word approve the travel. So the ones that are future travel, we'll have a separate motion for that. And then we'll deal with Chris's separately because it's already occurred. So let's have a motion then to approve the future travel. Moved by Councillor Josh Hill.
Yep.
Is there a seconder?
Probably should be you if you are supportive of it. Because Stacia did request.
Doesn't
it.
matter that we all might go to AFM, though, right? So then we'd have to pass it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
I still I like consistency. I like policy. So I think we need something more in place, I guess, than just suggestions. So I think if we want to, so it's clear for future councils.
Yep.
That
So-
what the process is.
So on that topic,
Yeah,
I
and
think
it's perfect point what Josh brought up, but that should be written into our policy.
exactly. So we can, and fortunately, we have in attendance our policy person who's been able to hear this conversation. So we can
Yeah.
certainly look at doing something and putting it into writing and giving it to
Just for
council so that it's
consistency, that's-
clear.
that's all.
Absolutely.
So I have no problem. I'll second. Josh's
Okay,
motion to
seconded
approve
by
it.
Councillor Ted Miracle to approve the travel, with the exception of March 7th, which will be a separate motion. Are you in favor, Stacia? The motion is carried. We'll have now a motion to
Acknowledge.
approve,
We're not approving it, really. We're acknowledging it. It's already done, right?
Well, it's done, but as far as I understand, it hasn't been paid. So
it needs an motion to pay it.
Yep.
So you can get paid his travel expenses. So can we have a motion then to approve Chris Miracle's housing portfolio holder to the March 7th, 8th AI Housing Symposium?
Somebody said that the AI would reimburse them. Has he
They
been
do
reimbursed
for
by
general
AI?
fund.
I think it was, if I recall correctly.
No, the money comes here. The money always comes to MBQ and it gets put back into the budget lines.
So
Yeah,
MBQ,
never-
would, yeah, MBQ would cover the expense and then MBQ would be reimbursed.
They send the check to MBQ.
MBQ is reimbursed at AI's rates.
Well, if MBQ has been reimbursed for this travel, then, and Chris paid for it, then it should go to, it should be, he should be reimbursed then. If MBQ has been cut a check by AI.
But we're paying him at our rates. Sometimes they don't line up. But the money, when we get reimbursed by an outside agency, there is a check that always comes to MBQ and then we distribute it back into the applicable account lines. It never goes directly to the person. That's in policy.
Okay, so can we get a motion then to approve that travel so Chris can be paid? It's post-dated approval.
Basically, the process wasn't followed and now we're just trying to correct it.
And we're correcting that by redefining or I guess defining it in policy. We have a practice that we do it every meeting. When there's meetings outside the territory, they're approved ahead of time. So when you say we're fixing it now, Angela, you're talking about,
In that he didn't get that approval prior. There was numerous meetings, he didn't get the approval before that. Now, he's put in to be reimbursed. I haven't let it go through the system because we don't have that.
because you're acting under
Approval.
under the principle that it needs to be approved at council.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's what we've been doing for, I don't know how many years now.
So is there a motion then to approve of the travel taken by Chris Miracle on March the 7th, 8th, 2023 to the AI housing meeting?
I'll say that had it came to council ahead of time, based on the nature of the meeting, I would have supported it. I probably would have moved to have him attend. I would like to think that this process is now very well known and will be very well outlined for current council and future councils. So based on that understanding, I can retroactively, or so we just said, David, posthumously approve his attendance of that meeting on June the 16th.
Okay, is there a seconder for the motion?
I will second, but only make sure that we reflect that in our
Okay.
policies and procedures moving
The-
forward, that maybe we look at travel in a different way because we do already approve a budget. So if we can redefine or define
what
that
you're
a little
doing
bit
is
better.
just you're outlining clearly what the rules are, right, about how it's supposed to be enacted.
Well-
And again, this situation to me is it's an oversight, call it, and what we're doing is retroactively correcting it. The payment hasn't been processed to the claimant, so that once this is approved, that claim will be processed, and then we'll seek reimbursement from AII, right? It's just at a standstill right now because nothing's
Mhm.
happening.
Okay. State Chair, are you agreeable?
I am right at time.
Okay, the motion's carried. You're voting in conflict? Oh, you got, no, but there's two motions. The first one, you'll record a conflict. Now, this is a separate,
Yeah, the first one I would report conflict necessarily.
the other meeting, the HISAB and the,
Yeah, I wouldn't because the AFN is on there and all of us go to the AFN, so
Yeah.
you have to make that decision.
what about the HISAB?
And after I read this paperwork that Chief asked for us today, I may want to attend that as well. So,
Yeah.
just for the record.
Oh, so you're
So I
voting in
don't
conflict then with that Chris's motion?
Was
It's-
this a motion?
Yeah, it's a separate motion.
Sorry, we need to.
So she had said that had the discussion taken place prior to, being that she was a member of AIAI in her role, she would have declared a conflict to support him going. Is that accurate? So she was saying, you asked her if she was in favor of us approving that travel with the conditions that myself and Ted shared. She said she would have been in conflict, but I don't think you have any issue with that motion today.
Okay. And State Chair, I just remembered that during the Iroquois caucus, I was double booked. I had to come back to have a meeting with the Regional Director General, Michael Byrne, and Nico Paul, and Chad Amburo, and what they were discussing the first day was the government is going to look, they're looking at Nick Saunders was on a Zoom call with the chiefs at the regional director's office. They're looking at a new way of funding infrastructure. There are different pots of money for capital. There's education, there's housing, there's water, wastewater, and there's housing, roads and that sort of thing. And so they want to pool the capital money to give the community a transfer of that capital, one block of capital, and the community would set the priorities of what their capital projects are. They're looking at changing the system and how they would fund major capital projects and through some kind of multi-year contribution agreement, and the First Nation would monetize that long-term contribution agreement. So the issues I would raise during those discussions is, would it require an amendment to the Financial Administration Act to enable the government to do that? Because we're outside of the 10-year grant thing. There doesn't appear to be any other authority, and they did agree that those were issues. And there are discussions going on between ISK, Justice, and Treasury Board and Finance on how they would go about doing that. So it's very much in its early discussion stage. There will be other opportunities for as they discuss it further with other groups and meetings which will occur in the future. And then the next day, I had to leave Iroquois Caucus and travel back to Toronto to meet with a larger group on that topic. And so it does involve infrastructure, which is very important to our community. So then Shu covered the meeting for me she took notes while I had to leave to go to those other meetings. And Councillor Helen Miller left as well, and she went with me to that same meeting. And plus, there were a lot of calls coming in and out from staff during the meeting. So it was very hectic. Okay, thank you. And I did update the Iroquois caucus on the housing issue, housing infrastructure issues, about the national study and the need in Ontario. I did give them a brief update on all that, and the budget's available to deal with housing, wastewater, that kind of thing. So we dealt with those things, so that's been moved and seconded. That motion is carried. The council meetings for July and August 2023. So the regular meeting will be on July the 5th and 19th at 9:30. Local business will be on July the 12th and 26th, and I do have a meeting with the Halifax at that time. Regular council meeting will be August the 2nd and 16th at 9:30, and the local business will be the 9th of August and 23rd of August at 7 p.m. And so I'm requesting that either one of you chair the meeting if there's any local business on the 12th. Sometimes there's not.
Well, might be there.
I would say throw that local on top of the 19th.
Okay.
Just because, like Ted said, there might be multiple people there.
Yeah, maybe. I'll probably read simple today.
Can we have a motion then the local business then will be on the 19th instead of the 12th? We will move?
Well, I think we need a motion for all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can move those dates.
Okay, so the dates will then be July the 5th and 19th for regular and local council, 9:30 and 7 p.m. respectively. It's been moved by Councillor Stacia Loft. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Ted Miracle.
I'm unavailable on the 5th of July. I'm going to be out of the.
So you're not available when? What is it?
July 5th.
For the July meetings?
July 5th, yeah. I'll be away.
July 5th, okay. Noted. Just note that in the minutes that Councillor Josh has informed council he'll be away on July 5th. Okay, thank you. So, Coca-Cola Canada is providing a donation of $500 to do a mural of some kind and $1,000, I guess, for prize money for the best artist. And this will be for the Jijunhet Uncle Wuna language school. Motion to approve this? Or is it just for information purposes?
There's
Or
no,
to support the
there's
initiative?
no agenda sheet on
Yeah.
that one. I'm not sure who put it on the agenda.
No,
I don't know.
neither am I actually. When I was going through it yesterday, I saw it and I didn't see the agenda sheet.
It seems to be something that the language school is working out with
I don't-
Coca-Cola, so
I don't see the language school putting this together.
but normally Callie sends a briefing note about what it's about. So, but do you want to defer this then? It seems to me they want to. I would think they probably want to post it, but it's looking for local artists to create a timeline mural that will help educate the history of Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, from Fort Hunter in New York, following the Lachine, then to Captain John Desronda selecting the Bay of Quinte for settlement, following to 1970, first getting Quinte Mohawk School, to the 1990s, and Jijunhet to anything current. We're looking to have anything of importance of history added in this mural for education. We also need one piece of artwork to explain Jijunhet Uncle Wuna in a timeline with QSR codes added to this mural.
So I didn't listen to the submissions is already closed. So I'm not sure if this is just an FYI, but there, again, it's no agenda.
If we could defer this and maybe reach out to TTO to just kind of clarify the context.
Yeah.
I don't, again, there's no submission as to who submitted it or,
Okay, motion by Josh to defer.
For more information.
yeah, to. Think of this as a Coke initiative that they've identified.
I would presume
TTO with?
it's already been posted for,
Yeah, no, like Stacia said,
Yeah, cool.
the window is May 1st to June 1st, but
it's seconded by Josh to defer for more information.
like some of these images are upside down,
They are,
so it just seems very odd. So I would move to defer for context and clarification.
and Chief, I don't know if you want to go back to our meetings. We were suggesting to change our meeting for next week.
I'm not sure who put it on either, but we can get that answer and put it on next week's agenda if that works.
Wonder
Yeah,
if
we
anybody
can do
else
it that
can
way.
hear you on that.
Sorry?
The only thing I would say about this approval for travel now, just like as late as yesterday, because the Métis self-government legislation is going to be tabled presumably by Mark Miller in the House of Commons on Monday, the chiefs have asked to, as many chiefs as possible, go to Ottawa at the Westin Hotel. They've got a room booked. Some MPs, Jagmeet Singh is coming to press the issue to vote against tabling this legislation because it will have a major impact on our rights. The government has signed an agreement with the Métis Nation to negotiate a treaty within 2 years. And in order to negotiate a treaty, you have to have existing land rights that were recognized at the time the Métis were included in the Constitution, and they didn't have land rights. And so that word was existing, was pushed by the government, Pierre Trudeau's government at the time, that it was the recognition and affirmation of was, but it settled at the existing rights, which left it up to interpretation. Stacia?
Sorry, Chief, I was asking about your request to change our regular council meeting.
Okay.
You had wanted to do that, but that didn't come up in our discussion and said in our meetings.
Yeah, the regular council meeting,
It's on June 22nd, which is next Thursday. And you're proposing to change those?
There's a meeting that does around at 4 o'clock that same day too, Chief, that we're told me to be at.
June the 22nd, is a Saturday.
No, June 22nd is
July.
Thursday.
Here in July.
Oh, here, let me see here.
It might be in July.
Oh, here, it jumped to the wrong year, sorry. There's so many meetings I look in here. So there's a heritage lecture hour at the Memorial Hall in Kingston book. Then there's the water thing at 4 o'clock, which I can keep. The joint water board's going to meet at 4 o'clock, and then the Jim Pine reception's at 7 o'clock.
What time's the Kingston thing?
It's for an hour at noon, so I'd have to drive to Kingston. So if we could break maybe at 11 o'clock and then resume at
I wouldn't anticipate a very big agenda with it being this quick of a turnaround.
or we could start maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning and then go to 11, and then we'll take a 2-hour lunch. That'll give me a chance to go down and do the lecture and then come back and then carry on.
Sounds good.
Okay,
So we'll keep the same.
so we'll just start at 9 then on the 22nd. That should work.
Sounds good.
I will try and join by Teams that morning.
Okay. So I will also, Chief, in upcoming meetings, I've been asked to, Chief King and Chief Scott McLeod to attend these meetings. They're encouraging as many chiefs to go as possible to the lobby session, because what will happen if there's unanimous consent at both the House of Commons and the Senate, then that legislation will move very quickly to be passed. And if there's unanimous consent of the House of Commons and the Senate, then we're told that legislation is not subject to judicial review. And it does impact our rights. We've not been consulted on this whole Métis self-government legislation. They're fast tracking it, with the sounds of it. The chiefs did have a meeting with Mark Miller by Zoom call yesterday in Thunder Bay, and they did press their concerns about the Métis assertion of rights and about the legitimacy of some of the claims of the MNO in Ontario. And apparently there are also issues with the Métis Nation in Manitoba having concerns. And so we'll be asking the government to MPs to vote against it, or to at least delay it. So Mark Miller was asked to delay the tabling of the legislation. So that's what the discussion will be on Monday. So, but they've got a meeting room booked at a hotel in Ottawa, inviting MPs to come and talk to chiefs there the night before, because again, when it's on Monday, they don't know how many MPs they're going to be able to get in touch with. We did have a conversation with the NDP critic by Zoom call, and we'll be lobbying probably Charlie Angus and people like that. So I need permission then to travel to that meeting to work to defend our rights. That one of the things that's really concerning was the apparently rights are recognized in Ontario, Manitoba, and Alberta. What these rights are, we do not know.
How do you know it impacts our rights? That's what I don't understand.
Well, right now the Métis are with land claims. They're asking for to be consulted, and they believe that they are entitled to a share of the benefit from the money, particularly. If they don't approve, are they going to start having to vote to accept our land claims? And how many people is that? And what's the legitimacy of the people who are claiming Aboriginal background? Is it true or not true? And Professor LaRue has done his study on that, and there's serious issues with that. So the other thing is that if they start with Nietzsche, there's $4 billion for housing off reserve, and Métis are eligible to apply for that, but we have to have strict criteria through an Indian status card and federal legislation to have the benefit of federal allocation of money. And if it's just based on, lists that the government arbitrarily expects with no federal guiding legislation to say who's entitled to that money, those who access benefits like healthcare, NIHB, education money, housing, land. The Polly case, and it gave them exclusive rights to hunt and fish anywhere in Ontario, where First Nations have to have a shipment letter to hunt in that area, the same area. Otherwise, if they don't have a shipment letter from the chief in that area, they'll get charged by MNR for being outside of their territory. It was the signatories to the treaty that had the rights. And my understanding is that in 1982, when the Constitution was repatriated to Canada, and the Queen and Prime Minister Trudeau signed the documents on Parliament Hill, it was only the existing rights of those people were recognized and affirmed, and the Métis people did not have rights to land at that time. So it's very legally involved. It's complicated, and we do not know what rights the government is recognizing. But the court did say they have Aboriginal rights, but they didn't say what it was. But if they're going to negotiate a treaty, then probably what those rights are will become part of that treaty. And does that infringe on our rights?
Yeah.
And what's the overall impact? I mean, Patty had you already said there's not enough money available to deal with housing and infrastructure and education, everything that needs to be done. That's why the government has this closing the gap exercise to 2030 to deal with the housing and infrastructure issues. And I guess by adding more people to serve, to have access to the same pot of money, is that going to water it down to the point where we're going to have a real serious issue in the fact, especially when it's all based on you attend a meeting and say, I'm meeting because my great-grandmother back in the 1600s was an Indian. So there was extensive research done in the lineage and genealogy of the people claiming to be, and I guess there are concerns about that. Now, apparently the Métis Nation of Ontario have done some work to try to clean that up, but we don't really know what it is. So our job there is simply to defend our rights and make sure they're not infringed upon by this legislation. Now, Mark Miller did say it doesn't grant land rights, but in order to have a claim inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights, then you either have to have a treaty or you have to have it recognized. And the Poly did recognize they had hunting rights, and it was everywhere in Ontario. Well, our people are being charged to go by MNR to go and hunt the same area. They're the signatories of the treaties. So there's a lot off kilter there. So do I have a motion then from council to attend that meeting in Ottawa, that lobby session with the MPs?
Yeah, just add it to our list of meetings, I guess, eh? That's all.
Add it to
That's
the
what
list
I
of
would say.
meetings? Okay, council in agreement to do that? Stacia, Josh, Ted?
What are the dates?
It's on Monday.
Oh,
And what I'm bringing it up is these kinds of meetings can, yes, these kind of meetings can happen because of the political nature of the chiefs. One day they decide to do this, and they get a meeting with the MPs on this day, so then everybody's supposed to make themselves available.
It'd be like not even that day.
So if we have to come through council, then it's gonna be over by the time we get to council, so sometimes we have to send.
So
That's why we need to reflect our policy, right?
on that topic, I think it's a practice that we have done in a lot of cases is you send an email to everybody and ask for a moving
Yeah, that's
seconder and
usually
away
what I
we
do,
go.
yeah.
So, you know, and my experience has been that most people respond quite quickly when you send an email like that, chief.
Yeah,
And
so-
worst case, then you can call me and then
If that's part of our policy or procedure, put it in there then,
Yep.
right?
But I would say for what you're revising the policy to reflect best practice is that there is a distinction between the chief and the counselors.
Yeah.
The chief has different authorities, has different responsibilities. So a distinction between the two, I would think would be only helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh, I agree.
It's because, I mean, normally we can have time to put it on the agenda, but there are situations,
exactly. They'll come up and they'll come up quickly and there needs to be something.
there
Well,
needs to be a quick
We'll
reaction.
probably set another one to Monday, I bet.
Or sometimes a chief can't attend a meeting and they'll say, well, you're knowledgeable in that area, so can you attend to represent that chief at the meeting? And so
Totally understand.
that's what happens. And sometimes I have to do an awful lot of cram reading before the meeting starts.
I'll have to review it.
Okay. So then we'll just add that to the minutes at the instructions of council and that meeting in Ottawa. The ferry boat launch. There is,
We'll need to defer that.
there's nothing here.
That's Councillor Christie's item and he's not in attendance. So perhaps we can defer that for now.
But there's no briefing note there either.
So, but chief, if you,
Because it was supposed to be from Chris.
Not here, you neither.
yeah, if you read the agenda item, chief,
Okay.
it's Chris's to give an update. So that's why there's no note
Okay,
there because
so-
my understanding is that he is going to provide a verbal update, but he's not in attendance. So.
And I also had sent an email to him and I believe copied everybody to tell him that I was putting it on the agenda for an update. Didn't realize though he wasn't gonna be here, I guess, at that time.
Okay, he did mention he was going to be late joining at the last meeting because of his daughter's wedding.
Around.
Flying, I believe.
I would just defer it for the next agenda then.
Yep.
Who will make a motion to defer it?
I'll move that, chief.
Josh, and who will second it?
I can say.
Counselor Ted? Stacia, you're agreeable to defer? Motion's carried. Okay, I finally finished the interim report. You have it, so I just need to read it one more time for edits because there's been so much going on that I haven't had chance and I've had to work at it. It fits and starts with staff, and so staff have been pretty good to get their sections in clarity, and so that's the interim report.
I would ask, I can move to acknowledge that, but in saying so, give you another chance to look it over, chief. Perhaps have the executive have a chance to
Yeah.
throw their eyeballs on it at the package as a whole, and then at our next meeting, maybe we can approve that for distribution to
Yeah,
the
I
community.
thought some pictures would help, so
Absolutely. No, it's good.
pretty
It
good.
looks good. I just say in another second set of eyes or sets of eyes, and then at our next council meeting, we can maybe approve that and have that distributed to the community.
okay, so just send it to the executive then to review?
And if you want to participate in that, that makes
No,
sense.
I will.
Yeah, so yourself and the executive for a final
Did you
review.
have a chance to read it, David?
No, chief, I just got it last night, so
Okay.
I haven't looked at it yet.
So I can move to acknowledge and direct final review from the executive along with the chief, and with the hope so that it can be approved at our next meeting for community distribution.
and there was delay because some of the information we needed from the staff was, they had so much on their plate. And so it was pulling it all together to get,
I think this is a good exercise, Chief, so that moving forward, and I would like to set the precedent that this become part of the everyday, I guess, logging or
well,
information, I guess, note keeping. So if the directors, if the executive know that this is a semi-annual thing, or I don't know, semi-annual,
it's a high level over.
be semi-annual, biannual. Anyways, I think it's biannual. So if this is something that is known, that as you're doing these projects, as these things come up, this is an expectation, it's almost then just kind of plugging your notes into this big document, rather than, like you
Yeah.
said, Chief, people are busy, so this is a new thing. But if it can become a regular thing, then it's not a special project.
Well,
It's just one of their duties.
well, normally the communications department would be tasked with this responsibility to monitor and write the report. They would write the report for me to review, but instead of me writing the report for them to review.
But again, I think this is a good trial run. And now that you know what information we're
But
looking
it's a way
for,
to do it, so.
and if the
a good
communication, exactly, so now if the communications officer knows this is what this we're looking for,
Yeah.
then she can be
So
the
we
one
can
that
work
gathers
with them
that,
to help them.
format it, and then away we go. So,
Well, I haven't had a chance to read it, so I'm looking forward to reading it. I think there is a distinction though between what is a TMC report and what is an NQ report. So those are the kinds of things I think that I will be looking at to see what we can do to, improve that our communication piece. Because I think there are some things, to be fair, that wouldn't fall to the communications officer for the political
Yeah.
piece, because it's not your communications officer, chief, they're following you around political context, so they will just have to be. Yeah, I just haven't had the opportunity to look at it. I did see it was in the drive last night, but it's just not enough time for you.
Okay.
So if there's anything I catch, I'm happy to offer some feedback as well.
Okay, good. But there's a lot of work put into it, and it's pull it all
Awesome.
together, an awful lot of work.
It's an extensive document, so, yeah.
But that gives the community an update on high levels and helps them understand issues, and of course it changes too, because since when we started to draft it, then we got approval letters from Minister Callander for the long-term care, and the assistant deputy minister gave us a letter to go ahead to tender construction. That's where it's at now, and then the council approved to sign the development agreement. So it changes. So you got to keep updating as decisions are made by government and also at council. So I got to read it to make sure it's up to date from that perspective. Okay, motion to acknowledge receipt of it, and it'll go to the executive along with, and the chief and I and the executive will review it, and then it'll go from there.
myself, Ted, and Stacia said good to go.
Josh, Councillor Josh, Ted, and Stacia Law, motion's carried. So there was a request from Councillor Chris to may have a community information meeting, and asking if a mid-afternoon lunch is just arriving in BC. So he's going to be back available. Do you want to defer this to next council?
I'll defer it till, or I'm supporting deferring it till he
Till he's
arrives.
Okay, we'll do that then. So we'll pick that up when he joins us. So the Ontario Geological Society is asking for permission of council to conduct bedrock mapping surveys and sampling on the territory to update the maps that exist from the 1980s. It'll take 2 days, and the intention is to drive every road on the territory to document, classify, and sample all bedrock exposures. Rock outcrops may be on private land. If so, they would access permission from the landowner before any work is done. Any landowner communication will only be undertaken with the approval and guidance of the chief and council, and the report will be made public. So there's a letter that's been drafted here. It's addressed it to Darla Bennett, who's Indigenous Geoscience Liaison for the Ontario Geological Society, Northeast Region, of the Department of Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry. Mohawk Bay Quinte have been dutifully notified by the OGS of the proposed survey program outlined in your one-pager attached to conduct bedrock mapping on the Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. MBQ support your research and efforts to up-to-date historical geology maps in our area via visual and physical sampling where possible. Therefore, MBQ grants OGS permission to conduct the outline program on the territory during the field season of 2023. Given that consultation is continued, we can provide community communication in advance. Our traditional and treaty rights are accommodated as discussed, and advance notice is provided should any details as outlined change. Please note that the outline project interacts with MBQ traditional area and community members. Therefore, OGS is responsible for undertakings and complying with the MBQ traditional and treaty rights and culture as they relate to the activity on the Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Please keep a copy of this document on hand during your field work to identify yourselves to inquiring members. If questions or concerns relate to MBQ arises during this identified work, please contact Megan Murphy. Does council approve this work being done on our territory, this geological mapping survey? And the sending of the letter dated June the 8th.
Yeah, I can move that, Chief.
It's been moved by Councillor Ted Miracle to approve sending the letter.
I do have a quick question before you make your motion, Ted.
Okay.
Will or would Megan Murphy be able to assist in this? If it's only 2 days, I'd say only 2 days, rather than having a letter speaking to collaborative or consulting. I'd much rather have MBQ representatives there alongside them.
We'd have to ask her then, I guess.
That'd be my preference.
Okay, it would be good. I think we can let them know, but we don't know the availability of staff and word.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying
So if they're
this is my
available,
motion to do that. I'm saying
okay.
that'd be my preference.
Well, we can add to the letter MBQ staff will accommodate where available.
It'd be an internal discussion about whether or not that's even feasible. I'm just raising it as is it desired and or is it feasible to have Megan or someone like Megan accompany these folks?
Apparently, it'll take 2 days.
Yeah.
And it would be a good learning exercise for them as well. Okay, so then I guess can we approve to send the letter, and then we'll have that notation that if staff are available, they'll accompany the person doing the work?
Yeah, that works with me. I just think it's in everybody's best interest that be
Yeah.
Okay.
that occur.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, it's been moved by Ted then, and seconded by Josh. Are you going to second it?
Yeah, I can second that.
Okay. Seconded by Josh. Say, sure, in favor? Okay, I'll sign this letter then. And with that direct action item that the staff are to accompany the person conducting this survey, if available.
If feasible. Maybe it's something the summer student can, partake in as something that's new and otherwise uncommon.
Motion is carried. Number 10, business registrations. Fast Freddy's. Is there a motion to approve this? The recommendation is to approve and sign. So it's Bayview Variety has changed their name to Fast Freddy's North. It's now owned by Michael Stephen Brandt. Everything else about the business remains the same. Michael does not own the building. A letter from the landlord is attached. It has been inspected for environmental and fire. Insurance not required to provide for business registration purposes under the policy. The recommendation from the staff is to approve and sign.
I can move.
Councillor Stacia Loft is her seconder.
I'll second.
Counselor Ted Miracle seconds. And Counselor Hill, you're in favor? Motion's carried. Approve and sign the business registration. In future, could we have the business registrations like accompany the documentation? Because otherwise I have to remember what council approved and what they didn't when they bring it to me.
Yes, Chief Diana was supposed to give it to me. I haven't obviously made it in yet. I'm trying to be there shortly and I'll get them from her.
Yeah, just in future, to have the documents all complete in one package. 'Cause-
She already said yesterday that she was doing that, so sorry about that.
Okay, no problem, that's fine. Um, So the teacher's bookshelf, new business registration. It's their business is e-commerce selling teaching books. Fire environmental not required as per policy, insurance not required as for business registration purposes as per the policy. The recommendation of staff is to approve and sign. Does council approve?
I can move.
Moved by Councillor Josh Hill. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
And Councillor Ted Miracle. Are you in favor, Councillor Stacia?
I am. I think it's just an interesting question, though. Generally around e-commerce and folks that are members are living local territory and are running e-commerce businesses through other individuals living on territory. So maybe it's something for us to think about or to explore later on
Okay.
as to what that might look like in the future.
Okay, can we have an action item on that then to look at e-commerce as it relates to businesses off reserve, operating on reserve? Okay, noted. Okay, item number 12. Arnie's Appliance and Variety. It's a general retail operation. The environmental and fire inspections have been completed. Inspections are not required for business registration purposes as per policy. The recommendation is to approve and sign. Is there a motion of council?
I'll move.
Ted, Councillor Ted, is there a seconder?
Yeah, I second.
Councillor Josh Hill and Councillor Stacia, are you in favor?
I just have just a follow-up action item on this, just to confirm that we have the proof of partnership, including the division's ownership on file. Just thinking about in the future, when there's new council members, they may not have seen or know this sort of documents, but I always see them in the drive. I'm sure they exist somewhere, but we can get this for when we are even, when these
Okay.
people are up, have all the
Okay,
information for this.
so that there will be an action item then for if there are partners, there has to be full disclosure to the council, who they are and their background checks and all that kind of thing.
I don't think it's a background check. I think it's just the proof of the partnership and then the addresses of those individuals and then a division of the ownership.
Okay. Thank you. So that's noted then as an action item. The business.
Yeah, Chief.
Okay, business registry renewal for Arnie's Frozen Foods. And so that's what it is. It's Frozen Foods, a convenience operation, environmental and fire inspections. Insurance were not required for the business registration purposes as per policy. Motion to approve and sign.
I remove with the same action item for this one as well as previous.
I can second you.
Noted. The next item is the same Arnold Sager pallets. Arnold Sager pallets repair and service shop. Environmental and fire inspections have been done, and of course, business insurance is not required for business registration purposes. Is there a motion to approve this? This business
I'll move.
registration.
I'll move.
Counselor Ted, is there a seconder? Counselor Stacia? Counselor Josh, are you in favor?
I am.
Motion's carried. Arrowhead Excavating, business registration, and they do contracting for excavating. The environmental inspection reports have been completed, insurance on file. Motion to approve and sign.
I'll move.
Counselor Ted, is there a seconder? Counselor Stacia? And Counselor Josh, are you in favor?
I am.
Carried. Next item is business registration for renewal of Bees Country Boutique. Okay, it's Bees Country Boutique. It's a general retail operation. Environmental and fire inspections are completed. Insurance not required for business registration purposes. To approve and sign. Is the recommendation. Moved by Councilor Stacia Loft. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councilor Ted? Councilor Josh, are you in favor?
I am.
The motion is carried. Business registration for Christina's Drive-Through Smokes. It's a convenience operation. Environmental and fire inspections are completed. Insurance is not required for business registration, and the recommendation is to approve and sign. Is there a motion of council to approve it? Councilor Stacia, is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councilor Ted? And Councilor Josh, are you in favor?
I am.
The motion is carried. Business registration for Gaswanta Trading. It is a wholesale operation for gifts and trading. Environmental and fire inspections are completed. Insurance not required for business registration purposes. The recommendation is to approve and sign. Is council in favor? If so, can we have a motion? Is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that one.
Councilor Josh? Counselor Ted, are you in favor?
Mhm.
Motion carried. The business registration for renewal for Mohawk one. It is a convenience store. The environmental and fire inspections are completed. Insurance is not required for business registration policy. And recommendation is to approve and sign. Is there a motion of council to approve the recommendation? Councillor Stacia, is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Ted and Councillor Josh, are you in favor?
I am.
The motion is carried. There is a business registration renewal for Mohawk Tobacco. It's a convenience store. Environmental and fire inspections are completed. Insurance is not required for business registration purposes as per the policy. The motion is to approve and sign. Does council approve? So can I have a motion?
I'll move.
Councillor Ted
Second.
and Councillor Josh and Councillor Stacia, are you in favor?
Yes.
The motion is carried. There is a business registration for Onkwehui Neha Enterprises. Onkwehui Neha Enterprises is a convenience store. The environmental and fire inspections are completed. No insurance is required for business registration purposes. Recommendation is to approve and sign. Is there a council motion to approve? Councillor Stacia, is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second you.
Councillor Josh? And Councillor Ted, are you in favor?
Mhm. Yep.
The motion is carried. There is a business registration for Ruby's Fish and Chips. It is a restaurant. The environmental and fire inspections are completed. Insurance is on file. Is there a motion to approve the business renewal?
I'll move that, Chief.
Moved by Councillor Josh. Is there a second?
Motion second.
Councillor Stacia, are you in favor, Ted?
Yep.
Motion's carried. There's a business registration for the coffee shop. And it's a coffee shop, a restaurant. Environmental inspections and fire inspections have been completed, and the insurance is on file. Motion to approve.
Second.
Councillor Stacia. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Ted? Councillor Josh, are you in favor?
I am.
Motion's carried.
Can I request a 5-minute break, Chief, now that we've got through those
We
business?
can. 5 minutes then?
Sorry, Chu, I'm gonna make you.
session, 11:16. We're now at item number 24, access to the territory. Shannonville SO Thomas J. Miracle. Shannonville SO has requested access to the territory. MCR draft wording is attached. The contract between Thomas J. Miracle and Dougal Energy Inc. is on file. It'll read, whereas the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte have existing and inherent rights of self-determination, which includes inherent jurisdiction over lands, peoples, and territory, whereas the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte have Aboriginal and treaty rights and other rights and freedoms that are recognized and affirmed in the Constitution of Canada, which include the inherent right of self-determination and jurisdiction over lands, peoples, and territory. Whereas the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council is the community government within the Tyendinaga Mohawk Territory and has inherent jurisdiction to make laws, regulations, and policies to meet the needs and concerns of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. Whereas the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council intends to preserve the cultural, political and economic integrity of the Mohawk Territory and community of Tyendinaga. Whereas the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council is striving to create an environment conducive to the establishment of economic development within the Tyendinaga Mohawk Territory, and whereas part of creating an environment conducive to economic development, the Mohawks Bay of Quinte businesses wish to enter into contractual agreements with the product suppliers. Whereas as a condition of the contract, the supplier requires a resolution of the council to enter the territory. And whereas Thomas Joseph Miracle, owner of Shannonville SO, has requested that the council pass this resolution and agrees to its content. Therefore, the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council hereby grants McDougall Energy Inc. and its agents and assigns the right to enter upon the Tyendinaga Mohawk Territory for the specific purpose of the contract agreement dated May 17th between Thomas Joseph Miracle Shannonville SO to access any equipment directly related to the aforesaid contract agreement between Thomas Joseph Miracle and McDougall Energy Inc. There and be it resolved that this right of access shall not be withdrawn without prior written agreement of both McDougall Energy Inc. and its assigns and the Mohawk Council. Well, again, I don't think that we can really agree to the withdrawal of the prior written agreement without the approval of those people. I think without notice, I would say. But I think if there's something wrong that you want to withdraw your support, then you should have that prerogative to do so. You know,
Yeah,
particularly.
this is our standard MCR that we've been giving for a few years now.
The same wording, I guess.
So have you seen the
Yep.
agreement? The agreement is just about equipment.
Yes.
That's all and nothing else.
It's a very, very big agreement.
Okay, as long as it relates to just the equipment and that type of thing, I can see it. But if
Yeah.
there's other things in there in the agreement that we haven't seen, I'd like to know about it.
No, it's just the agreement for the piece of equipment.
Okay,
It is here on file. They did provide it. It was just so large, we didn't put it in the package.
I see. Okay, is there a motion then to approve this request?
I can move.
Moved by Councillor Stacia. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Ted? Councillor Josh, are you in favor? Granting McDougall to approve the access to the territory for McDougall Energy Inc. In accordance with his agreement with Thomas J. Miracle. Are you agreeable, Josh? Thank you. The motion is carried. The podcast Babes of Quinte. Babes of Quinte, a part of the Starboard communication, would like to incorporate the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte in their programming. The Babes, Katie and Kay, are hoping to highlight more of the events, programming, and services on the territory The ask is for approval for MBQ staff to be interviewed for various episodes of Babes of Quinte broadcast. Each interview request would be facilitated by the communications officer, Rebecca Bartlett, who would also sit on the interviews at the Starboard office. A note from Katie Sarati. Kay and I started Babes of the Quinte to shine light on the amazing people and organizations throughout the Bay of Quinte. Approve Rebecca and relevant MBQ staff work on Babes of Quinte podcast. Rebecca and Lisa to review each request, and if a topic or political or controversial, this will be referred to the council. Does council approve of this ask?
I think anytime we can have, I'll call them allies in the media, it's a good thing. I'm not familiar with this particular podcast, but I know since, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, but Jan Murphy has been doing the stories in and around the territory featuring whether it's local artists, local legends, and positive stories. He's done it in a very respectful and insightful manner, and I think if this is an additional platform for MBQ to kind of talk about some of the things that are happening here, whether it's the people or the programming, I think that's a good thing. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I see this as being a really interesting opportunity, and I think if anything, an action item for myself is to actually listen to a few of these episodes. I haven't heard of it, so this is the first time I had come across it. So I'm really interested to see what's possible.
So
Okay.
this is, it does say Rebecca and Lisa would review each request, and if a topic was political or controversial, it would arrive back at this table. So I'm good with approving Rebecca and relevant MBQ staff to work with the podcast.
Okay, it's been moved by Josh. Councillor Josh, is there a seconder?
I can second.
Councillor Stacia, Councillor Ted, are you in favor?
Yep.
The motion is carried. TVO Crossroads filming an episode of OTMT. TiVo is seeking permission from Tyendinaga Mohawk Council to film an episode of their Decursories Crossroads in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Crossroads is a TVO documentary series that tells the stories from small communities in Ontario where they share the history and celebrate the resilience of their communities who have found ways to thrive in face of social, cultural, and economic change. Our first season focused on Smith Falls, Stratford, Napanee, Cobalt, North Buxton, and Van Leek Hill. One of the main focuses of the episode here would be about language and culture revitalization, tying in the community history and what Mohawks basically have had to overcome to get where we are today. Some folks would be featured in this series who have already shown an interest, and registration would something's cut off there. MBQ to work with TVO and Decursories Crossroads. Does council approve?
I'm in support of this as well, considering that there is going to be a focus on language and culture revitalization in the community, and it seems as though there's a few folks who have already expressed interest in this. I guess the only question I have is, I know it says approve MBQ to work with TVO. Would this also too be something that our communications officer would take the lead on, or do we have a team of identified folks who will be working on this? So just wanted to ask that. If I don't know, David, if you are aware.
No,
or...
I'm gonna have to follow up on that.
She submitted it, so maybe she's assuming, but.
Is there?
So I can move. I can move that. I just wanted to know, I guess, the extent of the reach of how many individuals at MBQ will be involved in that planning and filming piece.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I can second.
Councillor Ted, Councillor Josh, are you in favor?
I enjoy a good docu-series, Chief. What can I say?
The other thing is, at this time, I would also like to, on behalf of the council and staff, I've already sent Rebecca Bartlett a condolence message in the passing of her father. And so we extend our condolences to her and her family at this time of loss.
Yes.
And so you want, on Bill C-92, you want Susan to come now or later?
I suggest that we defer this piece for now. I think this will, if no one has had a chance to go through the presentation, I think I might want to read through that so that our discussions with Susan are, that we're prepared to have those. So maybe we can defer this to our next meeting, unless you've all had an opportunity to review.
I think having Susan and a full council.
Now,
I
one thing
agree.
I'd like to
Okay.
bring to your attention, there's a workbook, Dearman her last name is Dearman from OKT Law, did a presentation at the Chiefs meeting on the Bill Jordan's principle. There's a lot of capital to implement Jordan's principle that's not being accessed. So I brought some workbooks home for Susan to look through, and if she has there could be some additional funding there. So I'll have her go through all that. But in Ontario region, for some reason or other, a lot of the Jordan's principle stuff is not being accessed to its full extent. And there's a lot of money there. So we need to review that with Susan to find out, but I'll give her the information so she can read up on that, and maybe if any of that relates to what's here, she can advise council at the next meeting.
So I can move to defer our discussion on Bill C-92 when we have a full council.
Is there a second for Councillor Stacey's motion to defer this to next meeting?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chief.
I have to step away just for a moment, folks.
Okay. Motion is carried. There's an IS Indigenous Services Canada Amendment number 3940 for the new fiscal year to approve, and the recommendation is to approve the amendment and forwarded by IC for additional program funding for fiscal year 2023-24. And the money is for Jordan's Principle, 296 for food support for $296,175. Amendment number 39. Basic needs income support to offset inflation relief, $123,883.99. Amendment number 40. Funerals and burials, pursuant to the 65 welfare agreement, $24,440. Amendment number 40. Motion to approve.
I can move.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
I can second.
A recommendation to have the mortgage increases. Is Tom here?
Can I suggest that we move this closer to number 34 and 35 or 34? So this is number 29, and we can get through the invoices and other pieces first, so that
Okay.
Tom, if we do need Tom to come, that we're not bringing Tom in and then asking him to leave.
Okay, why don't we bring them in now and then do all those three together then, 29, 34, and 35. Can we do that? And the elders care home license undertaking would be him too.
Yep, we can, yeah, if that works.
Yeah.
I figured the invoices would be quick and we can get through those.
Yeah.
In the meantime, get Tom.
Yes, we can do that. The agenda should be organized under the director's items.
It is. It's under finance.
Yeah, I think it's just by theme or a director or manager that's responsible for that. I think it's just grouping it together so that when
So-
items come up that we're
Well, it might be a little more, yeah. Just
bouncing around.
it spans two different directorates.
So number 29, 33, 34, 35, 36 are Tom's items. The Court of Funding is his as well. Is he here? Hi, Tom. How are you this morning?
Okay.
Good. Of course, I always have to ask, how's our tomat? Your friend should be a tomat. So anyway, Tom, we have a number of items on the agenda that are your department, and so the first one would be the mortgage increase recommendation. I did see there are, I think, 3 options there. You can. David, could you ask Cecil to attend or link in if she's available?
1 second, I'm doing 3 things.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Realize it.
right.
Okay, Tom, you'll have to pull
Or
that
then
mic
Tom.
around to your mouth, so, because we're online, so we're live feed, so we won't be able to hear if you don't have the mic to your mouth. And I guess the recommendation is to go with option 3, to approve the increase for the First Nations Market Housing Fund to 345,000 and MBQ mortgage to 313,500 for 23-24. Approved to increase the MBQ mortgage limit to 345 for 24-25. A 5% increase will be provided each year for TMC consideration for future approval. Increase the down payment of the MBQ revolving program to 5% and for it to be non-reimbursable. Approval to engage with First Nations Market Housing Fund to start the process for increasing the First Nations Market Housing Fund's current cap of 23 million to allow for additional 10-year projection that will increase the total cap to 45 million. Increase the incentives to meet today's market conditions. Eliminate the ability to reference MBQ mortgages to other lending programs. Approved to cap the amount eligible for purchase of land to $50,000 for both programs. Those are the recommendations in option 3. So was Cecil available?
Yeah, she's coming in right now. She's
Okay.
just gathering up her computer and
Okay.
she should be right here.
Thank you. Good morning, Cecil.
Hi, Cecil.
Morning.
Good, how are you?
Yeah, to shift, yeah.
We're not in our regular spots.
So Cecil, you'll have to pull that microphone close to your mouth so that the people online can hear. How many people do we have online, Shu?
Sometimes people watch it back.
10? Okay. 7? Okay, good. Well, it's good there's community interest, and I'd like to thank the people for that are online also for taking interest in our community's affairs. Thank you. Okay, so we're discussing Cecil item number 29 on the agenda, mortgage increases, and I guess understand that Tom has already had discussions with you, and the recommendation is to go with option 3. And I guess can we afford the recommendation? So it would be to accrue the amount we guarantee with the Bank of Montreal under the First Nation and Royal Bank with the First Nations Market Housing Fund to 345,000 would be the maximum exposure under those guarantee loans, and then to increase the MBQ revolving fund mortgage to 313,500 for this year, 23-24, and next year to approve the MBQ mortgage limit to 345,000 for fiscal year 24-25. And then the next recommendation is a 5% increase will be provided each year for council's consideration and approval going forward. Increase the down payment from MBQ to 5% for it to be non-reimbursable. So what is it now, the down payment, Tom?
1%.
Pardon me?
1%.
1%. Approve to engage the First Nations Market Housing Fund to start the process, increasing First Nations Market Housing's current cap of 23 million to allow for a 10-year additional projection that will increase the total cap to 45 million, increase the incentives to meet today's market conditions, eliminate the ability to refinance MBQ mortgages to other lending programs, and approve to cap the amount eligible for purchasing land to 50,000 for both programs. So that's what's being recommended by the housing director. And do you agree with that recommendation, and can we afford it?
Yes, thank you, Chief. Well, I reviewed the briefing note drafted by Tommy, and we have gone through it, and I agree to all the recommendation. And gradually moving would be a best way of process to kind of go, rather than going directly to the high increase. Yeah. So I have reviewed it and I agree to it. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions from council on the recommendation that's been put forward? There's two other options there as well that have been put forward for your information, but what is being recommendation was option 3.
One question I have, when is the 5% down payment? That's going from 1% to 5%?
And not being reimbursable. So right now you can take that 1% back if you don't need it.
Yeah.
Or you can put it back into the build if you need to do, if there's deficiencies noted on your final inspection.
So I would consider that to be a substantial jump from what it was here. I'm not going to compare to what it is elsewhere, but that would give me a bit of that's what stood out to me, is maybe being a little high, going from 1%. So if I'm going to get a $200,000 mortgage, currently I need $2,000, right? And now I need $10,000.
What
Yeah.
would you recommend then, Josh?
That 5% is what is under the BMO as well. That's why we.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to match.
So you're making it
the same.
uniform.
Yeah, uniform. And also, as we have increased now.
But we're not making it uniform because they're not the same. So I guess want to hear your thoughts on if that number for the MBQ was 2.5%. What that would, what your thoughts are on that?
It's better than the 1%. Right now, the concern is the liability or the risk of having that upset limit of a mortgage with so little of an equity stake into the build. We can look at also staggering it the same way we're looking at staggering the gradual increase of the cap, where so it's not a 1% to a 5%.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate the need, not even the want, the need to go more than a 1% down payment. I can appreciate that. I just have concern, I guess, about jumping it up to 5%.
So the
If
suggestion,
that's a hindrance in any, I understand we want people to have skin in the game, or not that you want people to have skin in the game, but I think it's genuinely difficult in today's climate or today's economy to save up an abundance of money. And when we're talking about affordability in terms of a mortgage, my mortgage is less than people that are renting in Deserano, right? So that's the situation people find themselves in, is that they can afford $2,500 a month to they fight to pay $2,500 a month to live, and then in terms of the savings, to then have to save up $15,000, and
okay.
that's my concern. So
I share that same concern. I think that is quite the jump. And so I think if there's a way to, perhaps run the numbers again, reconsider what that might look like, whether that is 2.5%, whether that's 2%, and then maybe 3% on year 5. I'm not sure what that looks like.
Tom, you're talking about that if it was a scale or almost like tiered. So if it was less than $200,000 per se,
We could do that, or
Yeah.
you go
it'd be
Yeah, we can
2.5%.
split it up that way.
Anything
That-
above
that's-
$200,000 would be.
we could could do that. That would
Yeah.
be a fair compromise.
Yeah, because
would
if
like that.
someone is trying to get the entire 313,500, then like we can go scale wise. So if someone is just requiring 200,000 or 150, then we can go that way. Yeah. And
So it would be,
our reason was mainly to uniform it because we had BMO. That was the reason, as we are also reviewing the other policies and
Yeah, yeah.
as well. So, but yeah, I think that option could work out, that we can scale it according to the limits. Or yeah.
okay, so,
That would be the better compromise. So if you look at the briefer note, to come up with the amount of the increase was basically taking the average of what a turnkey general contractor option was and then minusing the down payment, right, to come to that. So if we were to lessen the down payment at that top end, would require then more lending to make up for that. So if we had that tiered compromise, then that would still work.
But as it stands right now, BMO is, what you're proposing would be 345, and it has to be a 5% down payment because that's what it is.
That's what it is, correct.
So MBQ, you've adjusted that to be 313 and change. You're saying that number would have to be adjusted if that
If you were
sliding scale.
If you were looking at trying to, if we're saying that, I think it was 345,000 was the rough average
Yeah.
cost. If we're trying to see what it required for lending, so we took what the down payment would be at 300 something thousand.
Yeah.
Minus the incentives that MBQ provides, and then looking at that leftover balance, and then
Yeah.
that was where.
okay. So then the wording, then, Ted, do you have any comments?
No, I think you.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
my hope is that you obviously want to, and Chief has said it at times, you don't want to put people in positions to fail. You know, you don't want to see that happen. So finding that balance to where you also don't want to make it creating the hindrances on advancing somebody's, you know, quality of life. Where it's like, if I could just get the thing built and be living in it and pay my $1,200 a month mortgage or my whatever it is, and get out of this studio apartment in Belleville for,
1,400.
you know, $2,200 a month, right? Like, I don't want this to be a major hindrance on people making that.
Yeah, that the down payment is a barrier to getting the.
It is.
So,
just need to get their
so
foot in the
let's,
door.
yeah, so let's have it be as I don't want to say customizable, but if a tiered approach would allow us to kind of meet individual needs, then that's what I would kind of like to see what the numbers are on that.
Yeah, it definitely solves. So the concern was from the raising or the rising maximum limit,
Okay.
right? So if we're putting a tiered, the risk
So would this
exposure
be,
is lower.
would these be $100,000 increments for the tiering, or would it be 50,000, or what would the tiering look like?
Under 200, 200 to 300, 300 plus.
Like 200, 2%, and then 250, 300, we can put 3%, and then right, and over 300,000, we can put 3.5.
Or at the 5.
Or at the 5, yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you guys. Yeah, that's.
Work on that and
I think
bring
I
it
think you
back.
understand. You can understand what I'm saying. Right?
Yeah.
So-
Because currently, like, of course, now MBQ charges 6%, but as I said, even in the past, that if we consider the incentive month, we are close to 4.7% or percent, right? So we are better rate now compared to bank. Bank is quite expensive, and as we know, Bank of Canada is again going to raise the increase. So comparatively, there is a lot of incentive at our end and a better program now. Yeah, but we can surely tear it down
Okay.
to 50%. Yeah.
Okay, so then is council prepared? Then do you want this hearing to come back to council? Do you want to defer this, or do you want to
Can
approve
we-
it?
So because we have to move forward with the selections for 23, 24. And
So you're looking for the number.
yeah, I would say
Yeah.
we can extract the increase to
Yeah.
the down payment from this motion, and then we can come back with something.
Okay.
Right,
outside of
because
that.
Yeah.
it's already like summer month and it's already June, and we want the
Yeah.
selection
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
approved
So,
and get
okay.
that draw out
My
there, right?
question is, with the tiering option, if council were to approve that, the finances are there, we have the money to accommodate, it doesn't frustrate the budget, does it? Or,
No, I have the cash flow working as well, one
So
of
we
the
can
agenda
afford to do
item, and
those
we can afford it, yes.
And our cash flow is our cash flow regardless of what the mortgage,
Yes.
that just determines how many mortgages. we
Number
can
of
give out,
well,
right?
instead of delaying, if council is generally agreeable to that, why don't we approve that today? To
That
the
universal
pol- the
number,
pol- The policy, the
yeah.
tiering, and it'll start at 2% for under 100,000. And it'll be 3% for under 200,000, and over 300,000 will be 5%. That's my understanding. So what I heard today?
I think we could even come back with some, because we're gonna have to modify, we're gonna have to revise the policy after today, so that could be
So why
part
don't
of.
we approve?
If we were to approve this as is, as is recommended, when you're doing your selections, you would then have to tell people that even we're applying for MBQ mortgages that like, you're gonna build a $280,000 house, you need to have a $13,000 down payment.
Yeah.
Right. So that conversation would have to happen anyways. So
Yes.
I'm good with approving this number of 345, and then you guys can work together on what that scale, because you do have to get these people selected. They do need to build their houses.
Correct.
And they need to know what they got to put into it.
Okay.
So, but definitely, I'm good with that number if there's the rest of the council is.
So they're going to need to know, we're going to need to approve the tiered approach. So if we're going to increase the mortgages, we're going to let the people know, they need to know which category they fall into.
Yes.
So we need to approve that now.
Yeah.
So you can do the
Or
work
we
of informing them and get the mortgage paper
Do that,
signed.
yeah, or we
and
do
not
that
have
after,
delays in summer.
and the increase goes for the following fiscal.
Because we're already in
There's
the
that
middle of
option
June
too.
and people want to get building.
100%.
Yeah.
So I would recommend council approve that. They've said the budget can approve it, and that seems reasonable to me. Obviously, if you can afford a $300,000 mortgage, you have a good income.
Yeah, of course, we have the application and all the eligibility criteria is considered before we kind of approve.
And again, I think there's a lot of people that probably have good incomes that can afford a $300,000 mortgage, which would be, what's that a month roughly at 6%.
So
You know, but like I said before, they can afford that. But in terms of saving up $20,000 on top of paying their $2,500 a month rent in town or wherever they're currently living, that to me is a challenge that I think we could hopefully help them with.
So
$345,000 mortgage for 25 years at 6% is $2,222 a month, roughly.
Tom, the last report I saw, if I'm recalling correctly, the First Nations Market Housing Program, the BMO guarantee, are we up to 16 million or is it 21 million?
16.
16 million.
How much?
16.
16 million? Okay. So are you asking that we move that up to 45 million now?
Or we're asking council's permission to start that process.
Oh, to start the process, okay.
Mhm.
I think we can have that discussion, but again, council would need to approve wherever the dust settles.
We would have to go through the process again with First Nations Market Housing Fund to see what our
Okay.
lending could be.
Could be, all right, all right, I agree with that. So does council then approve that motion with that exception that we're going to have the tiered approach? If so, can we have a motion? Then they can get on with what they need to do.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. And again, to qualify that tiered approach is for you to bring it back. And not to say that it has to be that. Explore it. If it doesn't make sense, then we have to pick a different option.
Yeah, I
but
don't think that should be any concern, like we can tear it down as shared like an average percentage of 2% and then 250 to 300, 3.5
Yeah.
and then over 300 to 345, yeah.
Because the policy has to be
Yeah.
there for the mortgage to be signed and go out and the money to be lent out.
Yes, yes.
So if we're waiting for a council decision, it will frustrate the people getting started on their houses.
No, that's why my,
so I make my motion to not frustrate the process.
Okay, so get on,
And,
because with, so that's what we
Noting that
need
they're
to
just-
approve,
that is
that, we
just
need to
here
approve
today.
that tiered level, so, because that affects the paperwork for the mortgage.
so just to clarify, so MBQ mortgage is going to be for 23, 24, 313, 500 and for the BMO we are going 345,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
It's been moved by Josh then to accept that, so you still want the tiered approach to come back, it'll come back in the policy.
Yeah, no, it's for them to explore that, right, to see what that looks like. Because I had concern about a 5%.
can second that.
So then I guess when they're doing the mortgage papers, then can they use that, the staff use that tiered approach numbers we've discussed this morning for writing up the mortgages? Or does it have to wait?
When are you doing your selection for mortgages now?
Yeah, we are having an agenda item for that as well.
Should be on the,
It's on the agenda.
Yeah.
So they need to know so they can go ahead with what they need to do.
Yeah, I'm the numbers got to make sense, so I'm good with you guys.
this package had to be done first before
Yeah,
we can.
yeah.
Yeah,
select
so
it.
we are
Yeah,
going step
yeah.
by
How
step.
many we can give out.
Exactly. So we have the cash flow as well, and we have the selection committee's recommendation of this year's applicants. And because this was the first one, once we approve them, then we can go with that.
Okay. So is council good with the tiered approach then, so that to get it started? Stacia, you are? Josh?
Yep.
Ted? So we'll make a motion then to approve it. Josh moved.
I seconded about 2
Stacia
minutes ago.
seconded. And Ted, you're agreeable? You have to say yes because the people can't
Yes.
hear. Okay. Thank you.
Speak louder.
The motion is carried. Thank you very much. So the
Yeah,
next item
that's
that we
exciting.
have here is the Corda funding. Now, Tom, this is to cut down dead ash trees, just ash trees or any dead tree.
There was a couple oak trees, I think, but the majority are ash tree.
Okay. So that's the Corda.
Mhm.
Can we have approval to deal with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think if anything, it's pretty sad that we're in the state that we're in, just in terms of that emerald ash borer. I don't know. Folks know that, there's so many people who have been relying on, on that tree to make baskets. It's now impacted their livelihood. So if anything, for me, it's quite sad.
Yeah.
I know a person who taught me how to make ash baskets can no longer make them. So this really has impacted our culture, and it's just makes me want to cry. But so it's sad to cut these things down. But
And we could look at replanting. I just don't know.
yeah,
Do we wait till this runs its course through the province and then we replant? Like, if you replant now, are they gonna?
I know.
Yeah, that's
Too
probably a good
soon.
question for Megan, like
Yeah.
she'd probably have some insight into the best
Okay.
thing to do, right?
Or
Like,
are there other trees or that maybe are recommended when removing ash?
So
If it's
just so that our friends online know what we're talking about, the Corda funding has been approved. The funding amount approved was $13,959. The total budget for this dead tree removal initiative is $21,521. MBQ will be putting in $7,562. And the recommendation is to accept the Corda funding in the amount of $13,950 and the attached project budget, including the $7,562 equity contribution under the Park SP budget. And so the motion is to sign page 3 of the funding letter. So does council approve to sign this Corda funding agreement? If so, can we have a motion?
I can move that.
Councillor Stacia, is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Ted and Councillor Josh, are you in favor?
I am in favor, but I do want to make a note or make it noted that I would like to see some type of planting initiative. Maybe, like you said, Tom, maybe it's advisable to not plant these in the current climate, but whatever we take out, maybe try to replace. Thank you.
With tree replanting, there's a forestry expert too with M&R, Tom, that maybe you could come and see me and I'll give you his contact information.
That has been a topic of conversation, with all of the water line expansion, and I know we're talking about alongside the roads, and it's at times necessary to take out some trees, but I think people, myself included, would appreciate seeing some
Greenery?
some
Yeah, so.
some replanting or reinvigorating, on us, because it was an MBQ project that, does that. So I'd like to see that kind of prioritized, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's UTOM, whether it's
Okay, number 34, the Rapid Housing Initiative units currently being constructed. The previous package was deferred for a policy to be developed around the eligibility and selection criteria. And the approved and revised MBQ rental policy to include the designation of units for seniors 55 that identify as homeless or at risk of homelessness, and a rent of $370 to $615 a month. Now, these are the houses on Upper Slash Road, Tom,
In York Road.
and York Road.
Yeah,
Okay, so
the 4
two-
threeplexes.
the ones that are under are being built now.
They're done.
Okay, okay. They're all completed.
They're completed. Ribbon cutting, I believe, is the
Great.
29th.
Yeah, I'm going to attend that.
Would love to attend, but that's my birthday and
Oh.
I'm declining all invites now.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, is
So
there a
you wonder
motion?
where I
then- Is there a motion then to revise the MBQ rental policy to include the designation of these units for 65 and older that are identified at homeless and at risk of homelessness, and rent at $370 to $615? So if we see someone is behind with their rent because of affordability, they could move to these units. Is that how it would work, Tom?
That would trigger one of the
Every-
eligibility criteria, yeah.
Okay, and
But there'd have to be a vacancy as well.
So
So
then-
this was a response, the last time we brought it forward, there was, I think, a general consensus for using because that's what the funding was based on, was for homeless and at risk of homelessness. But that council wanted to see it more into policy rather than looking at.
and
it
this
one-off.
and RHI was a grant from CMHC.
Correct. Not, yes, yeah,
It's not a loan, it's a grant.
correct.
Yeah.
So what this will do is officially designate these homes plus the other 5 senior housing that we had.
So there were, just so council understands, there were 2 $1 billion grant years, 2 different fiscal years. The first year, many First Nations project proposals were not approved. The chiefs intervened to ask, why is that when there's homelessness is part of one of the major objectives for Indigenous people under the National Housing Strategy. So I think because we made inquiries and made that observation, that the next round there were a lot of First Nations projects that were approved, including ours.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to get the allocation we did. I think it was around 5.7 million of the 5.9 that we needed.
So how much did we get under that, Tom?
Right around 5.7 million. I think our equity piece was only just under 300,000. It worked out around
What was that number
25,000
you
per
said,
unit.
the grant portion?
5.7 million.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
5.7 million? Yeah,
5,670,759, I think is the exact number.
great. All right, so does council then approve to include this in the policy, and that will be the rental amounts? 370 to 615. And does the tenant have to pay the utilities and all the other utilities and all the heat and hydro?
Yep.
Okay. Motion to approve. Then they can get on with renting them out and getting people in there. So I don't have people ask me, why are those houses sitting vacant?
Yeah, we've sent out a notice to all of the applicants that were on the waiting list that were listed as a senior, looking for a self-declaration for homeless or at risk of homelessness. And we received, I think, 13 responses. 2 of them were declaring that they weren't homeless. So we have 11 that we're currently reviewing.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the amendment to the policy to include what we've discussed now?
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Ted. Is there a seconder?
I can second this. I would like, I believe that we had talked about this at a previous meeting, is to look at what our definition is of a senior. And I know that's through all of our policy. We were talking about that with some of the programming out of CWC as well, as how are we defining that? So this might be a discussion that the executive wants to have, if you've not already had it, about that and how that will impact policy in the future.
Yeah.
But it has been a question.
So our current definition for housing at least is 55
Yeah.
plus.
I understand. I'm just letting you know, though, that there's conversations also too happening at CWC on what, if we should revisit
Yeah.
that definition
Like to make it lower or
to make it higher.
Make it higher, okay.
I mean, I don't know. I
No,
think
well,
most folks
it
like,
is a consideration because it'll have an impact, right? If you're changing the
Yeah.
number from 55 to 60 or 65, it's
or
all
to,
gonna
or to
have-
60.
Yeah.
Or you know.
No, I'm
it-
just saying
yeah.
in terms like if
of
you're looking
course,
at
and-
any of those three options, like it's going to have a different
Okay.
impact. And if you look
Mm-hmm.
at existing legislation, like there are, in the case of retirements, generally it's accepted as 65, right?
Correct.
And then you have programs that are free from
Okay.
55 if you meet the 80-20 split or whatever it is. So
Right.
there's a number of different ways to look at it. So, but if we have multiple programs taking a different look at it, we are going to have to come to an agreement on what they would be. So that is a further discussion for sure,
Yeah,
Stacia.
yeah. It's
So
just something to
generally-
look at.
Generally speaking, it's 55 and older. And the reason being for that discussion at the Chiefs Committee on Health and other committees is that the health statistics of Indigenous people and life expectancy is much shorter than other Canadians because of diabetes and complications. So the aging factors occur much younger in life, sometimes as early as 45. So they sort of adopted an unwritten policy that it would be 55 and older for administrative purposes. But it's because there are a lot of health issues with Indigenous people and comorbidity and that sort of thing. So the aging happens a lot younger than other Canadians because of the socioeconomic factors.
I think that guidance would be super helpful if you have that from the health tables that you sit at to share with the executive
so-
to see what some of those policy discussions are.
So
I mean, I don't think anyone would argue that our life expectancy is much lower at all. I think we all know the impacts of many other things, even some of the social things that social issues that we've faced as well, that has impacted our health. So I think it's just a matter of looking at the guidance and thinking about the services that we offer, the programs that we offer, and does this definition still make does it still work? If so, great, then we can keep that. But I think it would be good to review these things as well.
And then dating back to the Elders Lodge construction in the 1980s, they had to have a definition, and so they went with that 55 plus, and I think that's where it started here for program administration purposes to get into the Elders Lodge as a senior. And the only other exception that was made at that time is if you were, physically disabled. Then there was an exception to the policy for admission into the Elders Lodge. If somebody's in a
That's still
wheelchair,
current.
a paraplegic, then there was that exception made there to the 55 rule.
I just think about folks that are 55 that are close to me, and I don't think they consider themselves seniors yet.
No, so-
I used to think 55 was a lot older than I do now.
Okay, so anyway, I guess it's
Yeah.
been moved and seconded, moved by Ted and seconded by Stacia. Are you agreeable, Josh? Motion's carried.
He's still a baby. Still a baby.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Oh, 10. Yeah, I'm not putting anybody on the spot, like how old they are.
Yeah, Teddy's getting old along with the rest of us, except his senility is not as far advanced as the rest of us. His dementia. So the Green Inclusive Bill funding agreement for MBQ Elders Lodge Home project. So the Mohawk Survey Committee has received a draft funding agreement from the Green Inclusive Community Build Program through Infrastructure Canada totaling $25 million for MBQ Elder Care Home project. MBQ needs to confirm we have the capacity and authority to enter into this agreement by way of a council resolution. So the draft resolution is attached there, and I understand, Tom, most of this grant will be paid up to us in advance, right?
Yeah.
And there's a
90%.
10% holdback?
Yeah.
There was a lot of work done, let me tell you, to open up the Green Inclusive Build program to deal with this. Tom and I were involved in a lot of discussions with Infrastructure Canada and the Minister's Office to push this, and we were successful.
Mhm. Good work, folks.
Excellent.
So now it's setting and there's other communities now, because of what we did, are also getting Green Inclusive Build money. So Wikwemekong's we're going to build a new long-term care, and there's other communities, and ours will be a model for other communities. That's what Mark Miller had hoped for when we pushed him for $5 million. But if you want money, you got to beat the drum. If you sit here and just talk among ourselves that there's no money will fall from the heavens. So anyway, so the resolution will read, whereas the Mohawks of Okonie have received funding agreement from Green Inclusive Build Community Build Program and the amount of $225 million for the MBQ Elder Care Home project, therefore be it resolved that the Mohawks of Okonie represent and warrants to Canada that the Mohawks of Okonie has the capacity and authority to enter into and execute this agreement as duly authorized by the Mohawk Council. Motion to approve this resolution.
I'll move.
By Ted. Who will second it?
I'll second.
Councillor Josh
Josh beat me to it.
and Councillor Stacia, you're agreeable?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So good work, Tom. I really
Yes.
appreciate it working with you during this. We've,
And Cecil.
I
And
appreciate
David.
the
And
opportunity.
Tom and I worked very well together.
yes. A lot of folks were involved in this process. So thanks to all of you.
Yes, thank you to all these for sure. Good job.
If I give Tom a call, he gets right on it. We don't let anything slip. So council agreed to sign the development agreement with the Ministry of Long-Term Care. And the signed license undertaking for the MBQ elder care requires to be signed and returned to the Ministry of Long-Term Care. This document has been reviewed by, is it Jean Leonard, the lawyer?
Yep.
From ABN,
Yes.
with no concerns issued by our legal universal care or our architect. And so the motion then is to approve and sign the agreement for the issuance of a license. To not slow it down, because you had agreed to sign the development agreement, I did sign this, but it should have council approval. This is just part of the process that's required, so we can go to tender. And I guess we're in tender now, Tom?
We're under tender now.
And
yesterday, I think, was
and there were
released.
deadlines
on
to
the
meet.
11th.
There were deadlines to meet. We have to have shovels in the ground before the end of August to realize the $10.3 million extra funding for the project. So I didn't want delay to create an issue there. So
And just to be clear, I signed as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
the two of us signed.
yeah,
on
David
it.
signed as well. So it was so we could get to tender. So does council approve the signing of this agreement?
I can move.
Moved by Stacia, Councillor Stacia. Okay, and is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Ted? David, we also need F&TI to accelerate the PSW RN training so they can get more money there. They've got 14 in the NR program. There was an expression, there was over 100 people applied, 47 qualified for the 14 seats. So that program is underway now. And also PSWs, Suzanne Brandt told me they had graduated, I think 17 or 19. And we need, what's the number, 74 roughly?
I can't remember off that. And I don't know if it was quite that high, but it was definitely in the 30s.
So we need more. So we've got this, I understand the project will take 18 months to 2 years to construct.
2 years is our.
2 years, so there's 2 years of training time, so they need to accelerate that program to get more
Yeah,
people.
we'll have to have a conversation with them.
Yeah. Just flagging it, it needs to be done. They're doing good work, but we need more. Okay, great.
Someone was asking me about how do they apply for any of these positions? I guess that's not open yet, eh?
No.
No.
Is that going to be handled here, do you think? or
No,
is
that'll
that-
be handled
by the
Universal Care.
management
Yeah,
company?
I'm certain that Universal Care, since they're gonna manage the business,
Yeah,
is
we'll
gonna do
contract
the
out.
hiring. Like,
Okay.
it is not an MBQ
Program.
function for us to have our HR department hiring for this
No, they'll
long-term
have their
care
own
facility,
employees,
which is
their
gonna
own-
be
their own
independently
system.
operated.
Right.
Like it does anywhere else. And then, but they'll report to the council periodically, maybe annually. You'll have a board of directors. and-
This would be set up similar to how I expect the golf courses where.
Like FNTI, they have their own directors
Board?
Yeah.
and an annual meeting with the council to let us know where things are at and stuff like that. So,
The only thing is, so right now, because the licensing was originally taken out in MBQ's name.
yeah, for the
Is that it's in our name, so we are the.
operator.
The licensed operator in our name. Will probably be the employer for the first year. We have to wait a year and then we can transfer it over to the.
Yeah,
That
so,
transition time.
It'll be set up in the same way as anything else, as a subsidiary corporation.
If we did
So-
it now,
Yeah.
it would delay.
The
proceed-
license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then
so
we're gonna
Oneida
submit
did it that way as well, but. So the council can operate it, or you can have a contractor facility. So, but we still can contract it, being the license.
So we're gonna have, MBQ is gonna contract an operator. There'll be a 5-year operating agreement with, I assume, with
Yeah.
Universal Care. We would then form a corporation similar to how Mohawk Golf is, which would then hire that contract would be moved to them. They would be the employer. And then that's where all the risk would be absorbed as well.
Liability.
Liability.
So anyway, we had a motion to do work on this project, so it's finally underway.
Yeah, tender closes on July 11th. That sets up an expected construction start. I think it was August 14th is what we're shooting for. And that gives us a couple weeks of a leeway to meet the ministry's deadline for the end
Okay.
of the month, at the end of August.
Joel Abram gave me the Grand Chief Joel Abram, the contractor that Oneida dealt with that had a lot of success with their project, and so I sent it on to you, Tom. I don't know if they're applying or not, but
I don't think that they were part of the group that pre-qualified. So
Okay.
unfortunately, we had already started and
Okay.
essentially at that point was completed with the
so we have to
pre-qualification
stay with
stage.
that list. Okay. And I understand there were 6, 5 of the 6
Six.
showed an interest in expression of interest,
All 6 came to the site meeting yesterday.
and 5 are interested.
All 6 are interested.
All 6. Well, it's good.
Mhm.
You got a good competitive price.
Yeah, for sure.
Very good. So the more competition you have for the work, then the better the price will be.
Mhm.
All right, so that's great then. So that ball is rolling ahead, and you'll all be invited to shovel the sod curtain.
Yes, working on getting that confirmed. That'll probably be after the tender closes and after council awards the contract so that we can have the general contract there as well.
So
So
the other-
sometime
the
the
other-
end of July.
The other
Just trying
thing
to
about
figure out
housing,
dates.
Tom, like there's a lot of, like politically, there was a lot of stagnation with housing. So I was asked to chair the Chiefs Committee on Housing and Infrastructure. So when we had our meeting, I asked the regional chief if I could go and make a presentation to the Premier and Cabinet on January the 17th. I was given granted permission, did that. We did get a commitment from Doug Ford that they would help with capital on reserve and that they would participate in a trilateral federal committee to address this huge backlog for repairs and affordability. And it was brought up again on June the 5th, and he's appointed Stephen Clark and Greg Rickford to be the lead on the file from the political lead on the file from the province. So Chris Hoyos is organizing our first meeting with so Michael O'Byrne will come to the first meeting along with Vance Badaway, the Parliamentary Secretary of Indigenous Affairs and those ministers. So we're just looking for the date. So That's in the works.
Awesome.
And so all Doug Ford said to us on June the 5th was, bring a proposal, and he would go to finance and treasury to see if we can get it approved. So there is a commitment there, and we did present all the Ontario work statistics. We didn't have ODST statistics for Ontario, but there's a high degree of poverty. And I said, if you don't fix these houses where there's affordability, then they'll deteriorate beyond repair. Then you'll create more homelessness and more pressure on officer systems. And I'll update you on Nietzsche. I think a lot will happen if people can't get housing on reserve. They will be going to Nietzsche off reserve, so it will pull people away from the reserve to wherever there's a house that's affordable. And so Nietzsche's going to be administering the $4 billion over 7 years, and it's for First Nations, Métis, Inuit, urban, rural, and northern communities. And so we asked to define what is a northern community, because they said not all the reserves would be eligible. I think it's more like the fly-in communities is what they had. So we were seeking clarity on that. There was no consultation whatsoever on that Nietzsche proposal that Canada accepted with the AFN or the Chiefs of Ontario. So we were learning about it as early as this spring that this existed. So there was a presentation to the Chiefs Committee on Housing Infrastructure at our Chiefs meeting in Thunder Bay this week, and there's a resolution that's been passed by the Chiefs about that. And we're going to push for the money for on reserve. And so if the government can make a strong commitment to people who are not recognized, and they're already drawing money from the Indigenous Services envelope with no enabling legislation, then they better pony up for on reserve too. So that's the angle we're going to lobby the government on. So Mark Miller was on the hot seat over that Métis First Nations government regulation legislation that's supposed to be introduced to Parliament on Monday.
We're working on right now.
It'll rob our access to if they don't sweeten that pot of money, and they're going to be drawing from the same pot, there's going to be problems down the road. Stacia?
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And I think that'd be helpful to have a conversation about that, about the impacts of Nietzsche later on. I just wanted to point out that we're at 12:18, and I do think that we may have our local meeting pushed up sooner, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to go home and have lunch, since that's what we decided to do. But I still see that we have a few more items that are in our public business, so I'm hoping that we can get through those.
I think we can get this done in a fairly short order.
At least by 12:30, so we can have an hour break and then come back for 1:30.
That's what my hope was.
Okay.
So we can. Okay, Tom, that we're done with your items then. Thank you, Cecil and Tom, for coming to council.
Thanks so much, folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Cecil. Thanks, Tom.
So the number, the Andrea St. Bernard invoice, and she is with ABN, I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah, Aboriginal Business Network. Yes,
And
Chief.
what was this invoice for?
So if it's for work that was done with respect to the Yaoundé group of companies over the last calendar year.
Okay,
So it's a series of amounts for the whole year for the work that was performed.
so with the Yodi companies, there was $8,378.30.
Mhm.
Does council make a motion to pay this bill?
I can move.
Councillor Stacia? Is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll second.
Councillor Ted? Councillor Josh, you agreeable? Motion is carried. There are invoices here, an invoice from Derek Wong from ABN concerning $2,100 for the work done with the Briar Fox Golf Course and Economic Development Ventures. And what were those ventures, David? So I can just note it here.
So I will have to look at the actual invoice, Chief. Just give me a second.
Okay. Does council agree to pay this bill?
I'll move.
Yeah, this is in relation to our last couple of meetings that we had with Briar Fox. It was work that was done prior to that, as well as our meeting regarding ECDEV funding and the corporations and correspondence.
I can second that.
Thank you.
Councillor Stacia? Councillor Josh in favor? Motion's carried. Alan Pratt invoice in the amount of dated May 2023, Culberson Tract $11,154.50. Year to date has been $16,550. Does council approve to pay this invoice?
I can move.
I'll second you.
And Councillor Ted, are you agreeable?
Yes.
The motion is approved. Okay, we've dealt with all of, go to number 37, which is the COVID. Get the book here. The COVID policy. So I guess what they're recommending here, it says here, it's from Tanya King Miracle. In May 2023, the World Health Organization advised that it's time to transition to long-term management of COVID-19 and to treat it as an ongoing health issue. The World Health Organization provided recommendations, including sustaining capacity and readiness for future outbreaks, integrating COVID-19 vaccination into life course vaccination programs, continued statistical monitoring, continued developing risk communications, and community engagement, and other recommendations aimed at country-level readiness measures. In alignment with this transition, the MBQ COVID policy and MBQ COVID-19 vaccination policy are no longer required to be in full force. The policies will serve as readiness measures for future outbreaks and may be recalled at any time deemed necessary to protect the health and safety of MBQ employees and community. That council approved the suspension of the MBQ COVID-19 protocol policy and the MBQ COVID-19 vaccination policy until further notice. The only health issue is that because a lot of First Nations people have poorer health statistics than the rest of Canadians, and are more vulnerable, I think, to have a more serious impact of an infection because of the diabetes and the multiple comorbidity. Do we need to take that into account when we make this decision? That's a question.
I'm following the health of the world, or the advice of the World Health Organization. I mean, that's what I look at. I do think it is about long-term management. I think we all come through these last couple of years with, I hope, some newfound knowledge about what probabilities they are for getting ill, the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves. And right now, as far as from what I've seen in other organizations and workplaces, this is no longer in use. It doesn't mean that we may not have to revisit it again in the future. It just means for the meantime, we're going to suspend this practice for now.
So I'll give you like a most recent example. Like Kingston Hospital, as I understand it, has done away with telling people they have to wear masks when they're coming through the ER. So we're not saying not to wash your hands and not to wear a mask if you're uncomfortable or anything like that. We're just saying that the overall policy, I think we've satisfied the needs. And so it's not something that we need to actively sort of enforce or have on the books until we find ourselves in what may be another pandemic, right? So, you know, we've done tremendous amount of vaccination within the community, within the administration, you know, and we've made best efforts. So we just think that based on the World Health Organization's stance the world over,
Yeah.
that we should probably be in alignment with that.
So I can move that.
So what okay. So what I've heard though, David, is that that the vaccination doesn't last for your lifetime, that you have to keep getting booster shots as
That's
time
correct.
goes on. So I guess we want to keep current with that advice to the community. That's what public health
Oh,
is
that's not going to
recommending.
change. Like our advice to the community about vaccination and clinics isn't going to change. We're just saying that these policies in terms of the workplace it's not that they're not relevant. It's just that they're not as necessary as they were during the height of the pandemic. And again,
Yeah,
when
and
you
you've
have
got the
the
fall.
World Health Organization stating that the pandemic is officially over, it is now considered to be endemic and part of regular everyday life. It's time for us to probably move in that direction.
Yeah, from what I've heard from the doctors in the media reports I've seen is that they really don't know what the fall is going to look like when it rates for COVID. So
Well, we'll have this in our back
Yeah,
pocket,
and
and if we have
if
to,
things change,
then
we
we
will,
raise
we will
it.
bring it to the forefront.
Yeah, exactly.
it's been moved by Stacia to approve the suspension of the MBQ COVID protocol policy and the MBQ COVID vaccination policy. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Yeah, I guess so.
Ted and
Yes.
Councillor Josh, are you in favor? Is that a yes?
So yes, chief.
Even though you give me a nod, Josh, the people that are online have to hear.
We're on camera.
They're
You can
listening.
see me. You can
Okay.
see me not.
They understand.
And we've dealt with the upcoming meetings.
It's 38, Chief, the health and safety reporting workplace injuries policy.
Oh, yes,
30.
sorry, yeah, pardon me. Okay, there's the
2 minutes are
The
left.
health and safety chapter entitled Reporting Workplace Injuries Policy has been prepared by the Workplace Health and Safety Committee for the Tyendinaga Council. The draft manual chapter has been reviewed by the directors and managers through training workshops, and feedback received during the training has been included in this version. The Reporting Workplace Injuries Policy chapter is required piece of work being conducted for the WSIB Excellence Program. The draft Health and Safety Manual continues to be reviewed by the Workplace Health and Safety Committee and policy analysts. The recommendation is that the Council approve the Reporting Workplace Injuries Policy chapter and the draft Health and Safety Manual. Does Council approve of this request?
Yes, I can move that.
Moved by Councillor Stacia. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Josh. Councillor Ted, are you in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion's carried. Now, there's upcoming meetings. June 16th is a regular local business. June 22nd, Mohawk regular council. June 28th, Mohawk local business. Now, do you want to break for lunch now? It is 12:30, and come back at could we say 1:15, and we'll deal with the private agenda.
I think we have when our
The
guests
first, the first guest is available at 1:30, so they will be here at 1:30.
Okay, so could we come back at 1:15 then, 45 minutes for lunch?
That might be tight for me, but I will try.
120.
120.
Ahead of
sounds
our
good.
1:30 guests.
Council will be adjourned then till 1:20.
And it will be in private, so for the folks online.
And when we'll have a motion to go in private. If we're finished with that, we can go in private now if we don't.
Sorry,
forget.
Angela, I hear has something. to say.
Angela?
Yeah, I was just going to point out that you might want to let everybody know that we're done our regular part of the agenda, so we will be signing off.
Yes.
That's true.
Okay, so sign back in at 1:20?
No,
We have no more
We have
regular
no
meeting.
public-
We're done our regular agenda.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
So when we reconvene at 1:30, we'll be in private.
Right.
correct. We're done streaming for the day.
No, I realize I can follow the
No, I
agenda,
wanted
Angela.
I was telling you to tell the community that we're done streaming for the day. Because the rest of.
I see.
in
So that-
private.
Okay, this concludes our public portion of the council minutes, and then council, when they reconvene at 1:20, will be the in-camera portion of council. Thank you much for our guests who have joined, and thank you, and we'll see you at the next meeting, hopefully. Thank you very much. Onigi wa haisewat ko.
Thank you.
Thanks,